What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining my channel today. So I realized after Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, we now have 9 in the franchise, and I have not ranked this series yet. So that's what we're going to do right now. Let's get right into it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre ranking. Let's go. Okay, so before I get going, if anyone watching this has not seen any of the series, this will not be spoiler filled at all. I'm going to be very light on what I say of each movie, but this ranking is going to give you an insight as to what you should watch and maybe what you can skip. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise is all over the place. There are some very, very good entrants, and then there are some not so good entrance. It's like literally night and day. There's a tier list here where like there's a bottom tier and there's an upper tier. There really is no middle bar there. It's just lower and upper based on certain reasons I'm going to get into now. So let's get right into it. Coming in at number 9, Texas Chainsaw 3D. Now, I'm not even going to talk about the 3D aspect. I don't care. A lot of horror movies do that. That's fine. No problem there. Where my problem lies is they turned Leatherface into an anti-hero. The problem with that is this monster, this man, this behemoth wields a chainsaw and is a villain. He wears faces. He's a slasher villain who kills without remorse, and that's how it is. I always have a problem with any franchise that tries to take their main villain and turn them anti-hero. I can understand that in different genres, but in horror, unless there's a difference between having an understandable backstory and being an anti-hero. Freddy Krueger, for instance, has an understandable backstory. He was burned alive by the parents and felt that he needs to get revenge through, on them through their kids. Completely understandable from his perspective. Still not rooting for the guy. He's still obviously a bad guy. He's not an anti-hero. Everyone knows that he's the central villain. This movie tried to make Leatherface the anti-hero, and that just doesn't work for me. This movie could have been perfect and done that, and I would still have it at the bottom of my ranking. The way that I like to rank movies, as you guys already know, the number one thing is the main slasher and the strength of the main slasher. That's the number one thing, and then behind that I rank the rest of the movie around that. If him being an anti-hero, couldn't do it, done. That's my number 9. Coming in at number 8, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. The only thing you can do worse to Leatherface than to make him an anti-hero is to make him a sniveling, whiny villain. That's what he was in this one. Now, aside from that, Matthew McConaughey in one of his earliest roles is the best part of this movie by far. It also introduces a young Renee Zellweger, who is somewhat forgettable in this. Matthew McConaughey is the show stealer of this movie and fits right in perfectly to the mania that is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because those movies are just they're manic. They're just insane. They're just all over the place. They've always been that way. And for the role and the way that he played Vilmer, it fit perfectly. He killed the role and did an amazing job. This would be much higher on my list had Leatherface not been used the way that he was. Aside from that, they kind of worked with the family dynamic as much, but even it was a lot more disheveled in this, and that's saying something for these type of series, for this series. And I'll get into the family dynamic as we go into this. So that's my number 8. Coming in at number 7, Leatherface. Now, Leatherface isn't bad. They did a prequel to this, and for me, I'm just not a big prequel guy when it comes to knowing the why behind the what. I don't really care too much. If it's legitimate and if it makes some sense, or if it's like if it's a character that we'd like, that's someone like a maybe a Fred. I keep saying Freddy because Freddy's more vocal. He's more of a talker. If it's something like him, you might want to see how he became where he was, because there's more to relate to. There's not much to relate to with Leatherface. And for me, I didn't necessarily need to see a prequel of Leatherface or how he became who he was. So that's my number 7. So coming in number 6, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. So this one wasn't bad at all. The only thing about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 was a lot of the scenes were outside and like long stretches, and the lighting of the movie wasn't the best. So it was hard to see kind of what was going on, and it didn't have the same edge of your seat, like crazy intensity that a lot of these other Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies have. Now the Leatherface in this one was a very decent Leatherface. They also brought back the family dynamic that I talked about previously. Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's strong for 2 reasons. Number 1, the Leatherface, and number 2, the family dynamic. The family dynamic is extremely important because it gives you that you're never safe no matter where you go. And you had that in this one somewhat. I just think that the lighting and some of there wasn't a lot to stand out. I've seen this movie somewhat recently and I don't really remember much of it. It didn't leave a lasting impression. And one of the things about Texas Chainsaw Massacre is if you watch a good one of it, a really good one, you can't forget it for quite some time. So that's my number 6. What's up, everybody? Sorry to interrupt the video. Before we get into the top 5, if you have not heard of The Glads is a book series, a trilogy written by myself that we are making into a movie. If you click on the link below, theglads.com, you go find out much more about it. We're gonna get things going, but take your time for number 1, subscribe to this channel. Every subscription to this channel helps with us getting the movie off the ground. And if you are an avid reader, especially a reader of horror, you have got to read this story. A pair of young adults lose their parents to a drunk driver. Drunk driver's father is the son of a rich business owner who used his money in court to get his son off easy. And what happens next? What the books are about. So go on over to theglads.com and check these out. Now we are in the top 5, and guys, every single one of these is a good horror movie, a good Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. So it was very hard, it is still very hard to rank these 5. What I'm about to say, I don't even know yet. So I'm gonna figure this out just as you guys will. I might have thought I was gonna go a certain way and I might surprise myself. So let's get going to the top 5. Coming in at number 5, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Now, again, I've already spoken on the family dynamic that was missing in this movie. They went into a foster child dynamic with the foster mother that was caring for Leatherface, and so they took a little bit of a deviation. I really don't care about the origins. I don't care how they bring Leatherface back. That stuff doesn't bother me. I could care less. The most important thing is Leatherface brutal? Is there a chainsaw? Do people get killed? That's all I'm really asking for in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And that's what I got. And I got some brutal kills in this one. One of the first kill in this movie is one of my favorite kills that I have seen in quite some time. And that's, I mean, coming from someone that's watched Italian horror. And if you ever watched an Italian horror movie, they have some insane levels of some insane kills, and this is one of those that I'll rank up with any of the craziest Italian horror movie kills. But Leatherface, this was his Halloween Kills version for him, meaning the spotlight was solely on him. He was the only villain in this, and he was more than enough, and it was really good. Where it loses points with me is the missing of the family dynamic, which I absolutely love. But still a very good Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie if you're into the series. This is if you are new to the Chainsaw Massacre series, this is one you would like. This is definitely one to get you into the series. So that's my number 5. Coming in at number 4, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Now, Tobe Hooper directed 2 just as he did 1. How do you follow up a classic movie like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1? You go a different direction, because at this point there wasn't a lot more he could offer in that short of a time span that would have been so much of a wow factor. because Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 was so amazing. So he took the theme and the tone of this one and put some comedy into it. I'm gonna tell you right now, even though it is comedic in parts, it is terrifying. Chop Top, although he is funny in his own right, he's terrifying. Just the whole scene in the radio station, the guy is literally eating his scalp, parts of his scalp, as he's like trying to talk friendly to the main star of this movie. The family dynamic is back in this one and strong. And I liked the intensity of it as well too, because when it was to be horror, it was there. It was definitely there. But the mix between the horror to comedy was done very well, and it felt like a harder, light-hearted movie, if that makes sense. It was lighter in the overall tone compared to 1, but when 2 got gritty, it got very gritty. So that's my number 4. And I'm gonna tell you my top 3 is hard to choose from, and if you ask me this tomorrow, I might have a different top 3, but I'm gonna do my best to get this through. All right, coming in at number 3, I'm gonna go with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake in 2003. I absolutely loved, I had a video before about my favorite remakes and how this is one of the better ones that I've seen. Where it loses points for me is one of the things about Texas Chainsaw Massacre that I loved about the original is when it was filmed and how it was filmed worked and made it elevated what they were trying to convey much more. It felt gritty, it felt uncomfortable, it felt dirty, it felt all the things that through the filming that it needed to fill. This felt like a more polished version. And when it comes to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it shouldn't really be polished. It should still feel very gritty. Now, that even having said that, it was still very good. It was very, very good. The sheriff in this, he is such an asshole, but it's in the best way possible. And another drawback for me for this is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 wasn't all that bloody, right? But when you remake a movie called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where a guy is killing people with chainsaws, you expect a little bit more on the side of violence, especially in 2003 when they were remaking this. So it was coming with new technology and everything. I expected a little bit more in the side of gore, and that's I'm just nitpicking because the top 3 is they're so close together that well, 3 and 2 are close together. 1's by itself, but that's why I had a nitpick on this one. So that goes into my number 2. Coming in number 2, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning. This is what, if you take the grittiness and the intensity of part 1 and put it in nowadays or at that time frame's graphics and cinematic standard, and then take the gore for where it should be, this is our movie. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, I would start here if you have never seen a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. If you like gore. If you don't like gore, this might not be for you. This one's brutal. This one is brutal. 2022 is brutal as well too, but I think the gore level and the intensity and the brutality in this one is a little bit higher. But it is very good, and the 2 brother main characters in this movie their story is strong as well. One of them fought in Vietnam and was going back, the older brother, and was expecting his younger brother to come with him. Younger brother's like, I'm not about that life. I'm not gonna do it. So to see them going through that and then have this family come at them, it brings you in deeper, and it's a little bit more deep than the standard surface level Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, because a lot of the Chainsaw Massacre movies are pretty surface level. You know what you're getting. This has a little bit deeper of a story to it than the other ones do. So that's my number 2. And guys, we all can agree, I don't know anybody that would not put the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre at #1 of a ranking list. I really don't. Maybe you might do the remake. Some people really like the remake a lot, and I do as well too. But for me, #1 is nowhere close. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974. What can I say about this movie? If you haven't seen my review of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'll leave it in this video as well. At the end of this video, it'll pop up. Definitely check that out. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, is the best of the series, and it's not close. Leatherface is one of the most intimidating and the scariest horror villains of all time. Why? Because he's hulking, he wields a chainsaw, and he's wearing the faces of a victim. Like, what else do you want? What else do you want? And on top of that, his family is just as depraved as he is. Like, we are introduced to their family when Nubbins gets in the car. These people, these kids are driving across country, and they pick up this hitchhiker. And just from the moment he gets in, you just feel uncomfortable. You have no idea what he's going to do. They had no idea. So as a viewer, you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. And then when that scene goes down, and you think, okay, that's the end of it. And the movie goes on, and it's just the beginning. This movie is one of, like, you need to take a breather when this movie's over. And in the table, the dinner scene to me is the epitome of what a horror movie is and what terror feels like. Look at Sally Hardesty sitting around this table with a half-dead grandpa, a guy wearing faces, like people just screaming, and surrounded by, like, you know, bones and of dead people and all kinds of different things. And her friends are being served. They've been carved up and made into food. Like, the whole thing is just insane. I can't think of anything that has been that shows the epitome of what horror is than that scene. And the whole movie is just, once it starts to go off the rails, it is intense. It is intense. It is in your face. It is non-stop. So it's nowhere, it's not even close. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, is the very best of the series, of the franchise. What did you guys think about this list? Where do you rank the Texas Chainsaw Massacres? Let me know in the comments. If you're new here, this is the Glad's Horror Channel, the best horror channel here on YouTube. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys next time.